Welcome to the Deep Dive. Our mission today is, well, it's an urgent one. We're connecting two headlines that might seem worlds apart.
On one hand, you have a really chaotic, violent incident on the streets of Los Angeles.
And on the other, a devastating and escalating crisis inside Iran, where hundreds of lives are being lost.
Exactly. So we're looking at sources that tie all this together. The economic collapse, the brutal security response, and the very high-stakes threats coming from the U.S.
We're going to give you, the listener, the full context. We'll explain why this pressure cooker in Iran is now, well, visibly steaming on the west coast of America.
So we have to start where most of the American news coverage began.
Right. The chaos in Westwood, Los Angeles this past weekend,
Yeah.
Sunday afternoon, January 11th, 2026.
You had hundreds of people gathered outside the federal building. It was meant to be a peaceful rally.
These are members of the Iranian diaspora, and they were there to stand in solidarity with the huge anti-regime protests happening back in Iran.
And you have to understand, this isn't just political for them. It's deeply personal.
Of course.
They're talking about human rights abuses, about the catastrophic economic failure that their own families are living through day in and day out. So the atmosphere was already, very charged.
Okay, let's unpack this specific moment. It's around 3:30 p.m. on Veteran Avenue, and this rally goes from a demonstration to, well, almost a tragedy.
A U-Haul truck.
A U-Haul truck just drives toward the demonstrators. I mean, you have to imagine the scene. Hundreds of people already on edge, and suddenly this vehicle is accelerating right into them.
The video footage is just terrifying.
Okay.
You hear screams, you see people scattering, pure panic.
And the crowd's response really shows you how raw the emotions are.
Absolutely. When the police finally managed to pull the driver from that truck, the crowd didn't back away. They surged forward.
Just filled with this immediate, visceral rage.
The sources, they paint a really vivid and disturbing picture of what happened next.
Protesters swarmed the driver, trying to hit him with anything they could grab. We're talking flagpoles, trash cans, just their bare hands.
And one person actually got on top of the truck and just started kicking in the windshield. Just pure fury.
The police had to use serious force just to get the driver out of there safely.
He was taken into custody, and our sources say he's facing likely charges of attempted assault with a deadly weapon. He was also treated at a hospital.
And one protester had minor injuries as well, but this wasn't just some traffic dispute.
No, not at all.
It was political rage crossing an ocean and spilling onto the streets. There's this quote from a protester, Sean Zarabi, that really sticks with you.
What did he say?
He said, "People are getting their voice out, and this person comes through the crowd and tries to kill people."
Wow.
When you hear that, it just captures the feeling that the stakes are quite literally life and death.
And that's the perfect pivot point for us. The violence in LA is a direct ripple effect of the crisis that's unfolding 7,000 miles away. To understand the anger in Westwood, we have to look at why those protests in Iran started in the first place.
Exactly. And while this whole crisis looks political now, the spark, the thing that lit the fuse, was pure economic disaster.
It really was. I mean, these protests, they started in late December 2025, and it was Tehran's merchants at first.
Just focused on the economy.
Strictly on the economy, on the total collapse.
Yeah.
But almost immediately, it broadened out into these anti-government slogans, demands for actual regime change.
The numbers are they're staggering. They put this incredible pressure on ordinary people. It starts with the currency, right? The
Like
re-ring.
an absolute free fall. Our sources are highlighting that it's trading at over 1.4 million to a single U.S. dollar.
1.4 million.
And that decline has been accelerating like crazy since September, right after the UN reimposed sanctions over the atomic program.
And on top of that, you have massive inflation.
We're talking an annual inflation rate of about 40%.
40%. So prices are doubling roughly every 2 years. How can anyone survive that?
It makes it almost impossible. And there are specific policy decisions making the immediate pain even worse.
Like,
Well, the Iranian central bank just ended a really crucial subsidized exchange rate for the dollar. For years, they gave importers a massive discount on dollars for essential goods.
and now that's gone.
It's gone. For almost everything except medicine, wheat. So importers now have to pay the much, much higher free market rate.
Which means the cost of everything from meat and dairy to, car parts is about to spike.
Overnight, precisely. So if you thought 40% inflation was bad,
It's about to get a lot worse.
and then there's the gasoline.
Uh-huh.
Iran has some of the world's biggest oil reserves, right?
Right. You'd think gas would be cheap.
It was some of the cheapest in the world. But
Yeah.
now they've introduced a new, higher price tier for subsidized gas, hitting every single person who needs to drive for work or just to live.
And that brings us to the human cost. You see reports, like one from Sheila Iran in LA, talking about her family back home.
What does she say?
She says they're living off maybe $50 a month. I mean, that's what this looks like on the ground.
And this economic desperation, it's the fuel. But the fire, the social and political anger, that's been simmering for years.
Absolutely. There's so much anger over the lack of personal freedom, especially since the death of Masa Amini back in 2022.
That was a huge
A
moment.
huge moment. And you still have ongoing issues like the forced wearing of the hijab for women, which is just this potent symbol of oppression.
And there's something fascinating and really different about these protests.
What's that?
The political fragmentation. Our sources say some protesters are actually chanting in support of the exiled Crown Prince, Reza Pahlavi.
Wow, that's a name from before the revolution, from 40 years ago. What does that tell us?
It tells us there's a huge political vacuum. There's no single credible opposition leader inside the country for people to rally around. So by invoking his name, they're basically saying,
Anything but this.
exactly, we reject the entire Islamic Republic system. It shows the movement is unified against the regime, but it lacks a clear direction for what comes next.
Which I imagine makes it very difficult for the regime to deal with. There's no one to negotiate with.
Correct. And that level of instability has led to a security response that, well, human rights groups are calling it a massacre.
Let's turn to that now, the scale of the violence here.
We're talking about massive unrest. The Human Rights Activist News Agency, or HRANA, they've documented more than 570 protests across all 31 provinces,
So this is not a localized issue. It is everywhere.
nationwide. And the regime's first move was a total communications blackout. Cut the internet, cut the phone lines.
It stops protesters from organizing, but it also lets the government control the story.
Right. And it's why people like Sheila Aran in LA can't even call her grandmother. The regime has just severed that connection to the outside world.
And that blackout makes getting accurate casualty figures incredibly difficult. We have to rely on groups like HRANA, and their numbers just keep climbing.
They're climbing at a shocking pace. The initial claims were already horrific, something like 538 people killed.
wow.
The latest figures, from around January 12, put the death toll at 599.
Almost 600 people.
That includes 510 protesters and 89 security force members. And detentions are over 10,600.
A death toll that high in such a short time, it signals an extreme level of violence. What kind of force are they using?
The sources have testimony from a doctor, and it's harrowing. They're not just using tear gas. They're using shotguns at close range, automatic weapons, even heavy machine guns.
Against demonstrators?
Yes, the doctor described gunshot wounds to the head, chest, abdomen. Many victims were already dead when they arrived at hospitals in Tehran and Isfahan.
Using that kind of heavy weaponry, it tells you their only priority is suppression, no matter the human cost.
And it creates this climate of absolute terror. It's deliberate. Witnesses say the streets of Tehran are deserted by nighttime prayer.
And the state is actively reinforcing that fear.
They are. They're sending out mass text messages warning people not to participate. They claim terrorist groups are involved, and then they make a chilling legal threat.
Which is,
They say anyone participating will be considered an enemy of God.
and for you listening, we need to be clear about what that term means in practice.
It's a charge under Iranian law that carries the death penalty. It is the ultimate threat, designed to force silence through sheer lethal fear.
So the regime has moved far past negotiation. This is pure intimidation.
Which brings us to the international dimension, especially the reaction from the U.S. government.
And the geopolitical temperature is rising fast here.
It is. President Trump has weighed in, saying the crackdown may have crossed a red line. He's warning that the U.S. military has strong options available.
Including airstrikes?
Airstrikes or direct strikes by the U.S. or Israel. His language was incredibly blunt. He promised to hit Iran at levels that they've never been hit before if they retaliate.
That's a very public, very clear military threat.
It is. And they're pairing that threat with immediate economic action. Just this Monday, Trump announced new tariffs.
Right. A 25% tariff on any country doing significant business with Iran.
And that's a major escalation. It's designed to isolate Tehran by punishing third parties.
Which countries did they name?
The list included Brazil, China, Turkey, the UAE, and Russia. So it's a broad warning shot to anyone helping keep the regime afloat.
And all this pressure is leading to some very conflicting messages about diplomacy.
It really is. On one side, you have President Trump claiming that after his threat, Iran proposed negotiations. He says they're tired of being beat up.
But Iran's foreign minister, Arachi, he's telling a very different story.
A completely different one. He says Iran is open to diplomacy, but then he blames all the violence on the U.S. and Israel. And then he makes this claim,
That the situation is under total control.
which is where you have to apply a critical lens. How can anything be under total control when you've been forced to shut down the entire country's internet?
The blackout itself is proof of the instability.
Exactly. And we have to place this in the broader regional context, which gives those U.S. warnings a lot more weight.
That context is vital.
Iran's regional influence, their axis of resistance, has been really weakened since the 2023 Israel-Hamas war. They have fewer external victories to distract the public with.
And we can't forget the U.S. bombed nuclear sites in Iran just last June. And the recent capture of their ally, Nicolas Maduro, it all adds to the sense that the U.S. is tightening the screws.
So you have this perfect storm, massive internal failure, meeting intense, explicit external pressure. It's arguably the most volatile situation the regime has faced in decades.
Okay, let's summarize the key takeaways for you, the listener. First, the chaos in Los Angeles shows that this crisis is immediate and tangible, even here on U.S. soil.
But the core of the story is a nationwide crisis inside Iran, which is driven by economic collapse. The crackdown is extreme, with the death toll now approaching 600, according to activists.
And this is all being compounded by a major escalation from the U.S. new tariffs on third parties and very direct military threats.
And that central conflict in messaging Iran claiming total control while enforcing a total blackout and facing a rising death toll, that's the key point of friction right now.
Which raises a critical question about sustainability.
It does. If the root causes the failed economy, the lack of freedom, if they don't change, how long can the state just rely on violence and blackouts to keep a lid on things?
The political analyst Trita Parsi had a really sobering take on this. He said that even if they manage to violently crush these protests, the peace will be short-lived unless the regime makes something very significant in terms of changes.
And the scale of this crisis, with the personal economic pain affecting every single citizen, combined with these very real military threats, it just feels fundamentally different this time.
So, the provocative thought we want to leave you with is this. Given that the regime has already deployed its most extreme tools, total blackout, mass killings, heavy weapons, what options does Tehran even have left for when the next wave of protest inevitably breaks out? And what happens if the U.S. decides its red line has finally been crossed? That's the question hanging over everything.